From Adversity to Abundance, hosted by entrepreneur and seasoned real estate investor Jamie Bateman, is the ultimate guide for active and passive investors seeking clarity, mental fitness, and the confidence to make inspired decisions in the world of real estate. With a decade plus of investing experience across various niches and a background as a combat veteran, former Army officer, and multi-million-dollar mortgage note company owner, Jamie brings a wealth of knowledge and inspiring stories to each episode. Through weekly episodes featuring insightful interviews with industry leaders and solo explorations of mindset and strategy, listeners will uncover actionable advice and tips to overcome challenges and build lasting financial success. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting, From Adversity to Abundance is your roadmap to turning obstacles into opportunities and achieving financial freedom.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and today we have with us Mark Monroe. Mark is a creative finance expert, a best-selling author. Mark's done a ton in real estate investing and a lot in finance. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it. We talked earlier, and we're both spent some time. You're still in Maryland, and that's where I started my career,
Yeah,
up in the Baltimore, D.C., Maryland area. So thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a fun conversation. Um, Fun and probably pretty moving because I know you've been through some tough times. But before we get there, Mark, talk to the listener about your life currently and some of the abundance that you're experiencing now.
Right now, I love my life. I set my own schedule. I don't start working until 11, and I get done roughly about 5. And on Fridays, because I live in South Florida, and on Fridays, I don't work. In the summertime, we travel. We're actually just making plans to go to Spain next week, wherever that island where Rafa Nadal's from. So we're going to go over there for a long weekend, come back, and then we're going to, at the end of June, head up to Vancouver. So that's why I love this, because you can work anywhere in the world remotely.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Uh, and let's get right into it. I know that wasn't an option for you in your childhood. Because I know you grew up in poverty. So let's dive into that if you would. Um, Set the stage for our listener. What were things like for you as a child?
Even though I grew up in poverty, I was still a happy child. My father left when I was young. He left when I was like 6 or 7. I remember for 3 months straight. I grew up in Vermont, so it was really cold. But I remember 3 months straight for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All we ate for a family, myself, my 2 sisters, my mom, and it fed 4 of us Kraft macaroni and cheese out of the box. I remember it was like 29 cents a box because I had to walk to the grocery store because my mother didn't have a car, buy the stuff, bring it back. And then during that same time period, it was winter and she had no money for fuel. So it was the stove was electric. So we all had to sleep on the kitchen floor during that time period. And then on top of it, I had a severe case of ADHD and dyslexia. So I was like that one child. So I was all over the place.
Right.
But back then things I thought was holding me back, but nowadays I look at it and I use it to my advantage and it helped me succeed to
Mm.
where I am at today.
Oh, that's a nice teaser about the mindset shift you must have made. Um, So, okay, so and you said you were always a happy kid. So, um, I mean, okay, so the as a child, I mean, how long did you live in poverty for? How long did that last for?
I would say pretty much most of my childhood,
Hmm.
up until, I mean, it wasn't like, yes, we didn't have the Kraft mac and cheese. My mother started doing a little bit of work, so she got some regular food. But
Yeah.
my clothes were always hand downs from my cousins, that type
Hmm.
of thing. So
Sure.
I remember looking down at my sneaker in the summer, looking to see my toes sticking out, that type of thing when I was a child.
Right.
But I
Right.
didn't know any better. When you're
Sure.
young like that, you don't know. And
Yeah.
but then you look at your friends and you saw what they had and you don't really
Yeah.
have what they had and you wish they had. So I
Sure.
just started doing a lot of odd jobs at that young age, doing
Okay.
mowing, help putting food on the table. But then really what really changed me a lot at 15, I had to help pay $25 a week at home to help put food on the table. So I went to McDonald's, the McDonald's Corporation. I started working at $3.50 an hour, working 50, 60 hours a week at 15 while I was still in school. And
Wow.
that's where I excelled in my ADHD because I could multitask. And I ended up running one of the stores while I was still in high school. And I ended up becoming a regional manager. And a lot of those people were my mentors, and that's where I really excelled, and they actually helped paid for the schooling. So I started
Wow.
looking at people that were doing well and made
Yeah.
them my mentors, and they didn't even realize that they were my mentors.
That's awesome. There's a lot that you just covered. That's really couple of gold nuggets for sure. And we've had episodes on this show where we've talked about different, just different mental, disorder challenges or different learning disorders like dyslexia. We've had a couple of people with bipolar disorder where really, in large part, it can end up being a superpower in some ways. We're not saying that there aren't struggles that come along with being dyslexic or having dyslexia or having ADHD or having bipolar disorder for sure. But there is an upside oftentimes, and I think in today's world we kind of overlook that and just maybe you might feel like you got this diagnosis and now it's a curse, but it sounds like you were able to kind of use it to your advantage. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest thing that was really, starting to be self-employed and starting different businesses is where I was weak, especially dyslexia with contracts and reading. I
Mm-hmm.
found a business partner that was strong where I was weak, and where he was weaker, I was strong. And so that
Mm-hmm.
created a good marriage. But nowadays with technology, dyslexia is kind of a thing of the past. I mean,
Mm.
technology is really helping us out a lot. I mean, it's still there,
Sure.
but it's really helped a lot. And then my ADH thing, I can multitask and do 100 things at once, but now I just kind of really slow down because you can miss things and create errors that could cost you more money if you go too quickly.
Sure. Absolutely. And then the second point was that I love that I love that you made was that you surrounded yourself with people that were further ahead than you, and you looked up to them and you were using basically, I don't want to say using them, but copying what they were doing and intentionally learning from them as mentors, whether they knew it or not. Do you have maybe a specific example of somebody that you
Mm,
did that with?
it- Yeah, I do it all the time, but I remember this one lady. She was a manager at McDonald's, and she was so good at people handling skills where people loved her.
Mm,
And really what she did was she would get to sit down and talk to them and talk to them about their personal life, what was going on. So she
yeah.
was building that rapport. About 80% of her phone call was really connecting. And that was probably one of the biggest things because it really works in the seller financing world.
Mm,
Because when you're doing seller financing, if you're buying a property and you're trying to convince a seller through seller financing, it's a marriage.
mm,
You're in a long-term commitment with them for whatever the term is, 5, 7, 10, 30 years, whatever you're trying to do. So
mm-hmm.
that was probably one of the biggest thing. Her name is Mary Brown, and I still remember.
Hmm.
And but yeah, that was
Yeah.
probably the biggest nugget that I learned from.
I mean, I think that's in large part, a lost skill these days, and I think it's more and more valuable. You spoke about technology, and that's amazing, right? I mean, AI, and there's so much we can do with that, but I think that's that human piece and that rapport building skill is just like so valuable just to be able to listen and understand and have empathy for somebody else, right? I think it's going to continue to be really valuable. But I just love the fact that you were intentional about, uh, putting really watching these people and learning from them. Um, so after 15, fast forward, how did you get into real estate investing?
So, well, I did my first deal when I was 19. I did the old
Okay.
Carlton Sheets book. I was
Yeah,
still in
yeah.
Vermont at that time. Ordered this cassette book. I put we buy houses. I went cardboard box, black magic marker that was waterproof. We buy houses. Went around,
Hmm.
put them on the telephone poles. Didn't know I couldn't do that. I got a call from municipality. I got in trouble. So I going around taking them down. So this guy called me up and he was trying to sell his home. I was taking him down, a mobile home. He goes, "It's you want 18,000 for 21." I'm like, "I'm not interested in a mobile home." Calls me back a week later. He goes, "Give me 15,000." I go, "I'm not interested in a mobile home." Calls me back another week. He goes, "Give me 12,000." I go, "Well, do you own the land?" He goes, "No, it's in a mobile home park. I'm not interested." So a month goes by. Calls me back again. He goes, "It's worth. Give me 6,000. It's worth 21." Now I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's a deal here. Granted, I'm 19.
Sure.
I didn't know what I was doing yet. I said, I told you I'm not in. I'm like, why do you have to sell? He goes, oh, I don't live in it. Some lot rent coming due, blah, blah, blah. And I go to him, I told you I'm not interested in a mobile home. Yeah, at all. But this is what I'll do to help you out. I'll give you 3,000. He goes, oh, give me 4,000. I'm not interested in a mobile home. He goes, all right, I'll go ahead and do it for 3,000. I said, okay, I have to go get a contract because at the time we didn't have the internet. I had to go to the staple. Got it. So I hung up. I immediately called the newspaper, place a classified ad, mobile home for sale, seller financing for $25,000 with $3,000 down. First lady called me up. Her and her boyfriend went out, looked at the property. They loved it immediately. So they gave me the $3,000. I took that $3,000, gave it to the seller. We created a note for the difference at around 7.5%, 8% over 7 years. So it was $300 a month. That was my car payment and my insurance payment when I was 19 years old. That was a lot of money. So that was my
Sure.
first deal. I'm
Wow.
sure the paperwork was all screwed up,
So,
but
and that was from the Carlton Sheet stuff. I mean, that's where,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah.
amazing.
But
That's
I
amazing.
was 19, but then I jumped out of it and went back into the corporate world because I was going up into the McDonald's
Yeah, yeah.
corporation. And
Okay.
then I jumped back in at 25. And that's why I left Vermont to go down to the DC because I was going to be
Okay.
working for the corporation down there. But I wanted to learn more about real estate. So I took origination class. And that guy came in and said, hey, you want to work for me? I ended up working for him for about a year and a half. And then from there, went and started our own mortgage banking firm. I ended up having 107 loan officers working for me up in the Baltimore, DC area,
That's
back
amazing.
around 90. Yeah, actually, it'd be 30 years ago, believe it or not, around this time,
Okay.
May, May 2015. That's when I started my real
Was it
career going into it.
or was it you talking about 1995?
1995.
Okay,
Yeah,
1995. Wow.
yeah,
That
30
is
years
amazing.
ago. Crazy.
And how long did you do that for?
We had that company going for about, I was with them for about 3 years. I mean, I was making crazy money at 28, 29, $35,000 a month, $400,000 bonuses at the end of the year, tickets to the Orioles, tickets to the Washington Capitals. I mean, crazy,
Yeah.
stupid. You don't think the money's going to end. And
Right.
think about this, people. When you're in your 20s, you think the world, you're never going to get kicked and fallen down.
Right.
Just be smart about your money and know when to pull the plug. So
Mm,
I made all that money, did really
yeah.
well, sold mine, came to Florida, got into another business, and all the money I made in that, I went into another one and lost 90% of it because
Wow.
it's didn't. So at least I was young enough to learn it.
What business was that?
That was doing an online lending mortgages,
Okay.
and to make $800 to make 800 it cost us $3,500 to make 800. The model did not make sense. They're like, oh, don't worry about it. We went and raised $7 million from the Tampa Bay Bucks, hired 60 people, got the beautiful office, blah blah blah. Some of these were my
Mhm.
really close friends, and now I was like in my early 30s, and it's just we ran out of money, and they're like that. My partner was like, "Oh, I'll get some more capital," and the money wasn't coming in. So for 2 months, all the money I made in a previous business, I kept covering rent, employees for 2 months out of my own pocket, and went through all 90% of it. And I just had to pull the plug and couldn't work for about 6 months afterwards.
Just because of the mentally you just couldn't. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yep,
Um, I mean, I don't.
mental.
I mean, I've had, frankly, the loan servicing company that I started, that I shared a little bit about on your show. Uh, I should have quit earlier, to be honest with you. And curious, did you have any lessons that you learned like that? Anything you would, obviously you wouldn't have gotten into it, it sounds like, but in the moment, what would you have done differently?
Well, you have to know when to pull the plug quickly.
Hmm.
That's kind of like how much money are you going to keep putting into it if it's going to keep bleeding? Because I've done another business after the fact, and I didn't put a lot of money into it, but I knew immediately after 3 months of losing money, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, it's time to pull the plug and move on.
Right, 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 right.
Just know when to walk away.
Yeah, that's good. Um, yeah, I know in my case we didn't do really enough like market testing to make sure that the demand was there, right? We thought put in all this capital, get all these licenses, build it, and they will come. And it's like we did all that, and then we just didn't have enough revenue. We didn't have enough income, and should have grown more organically. But okay, so I mean, so you made a bunch of money and then lost most of it. after having started, being born into poverty. All right, so then set the stage at that point after you've lost 90% of the money you'd made as a mortgage banker. Um, what's going through your mind? You couldn't work for 6 months, you said. How did you get out of that funk that I presume you were in?
Sure. Then I just started getting back into doing the creative seller financing strategies. It
Okay.
was just me. Yeah. So at the time, it was like around 9/11-ish, actually a little bit before, but 9/11 was really when it took off because so I had a license. I was at the time I was doing the real estate investing, like the fix and flips or rentals, like traditionally everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have the capital. So
Mm,
how am I going to start back over with no money? But I
right.
had the knowledge of how to do loans. So what I started doing is the homes are sitting on the market, kind of like where they're at now. They're sitting on the market at that time for 4 6 months. So I started calling sellers up, and it was just me and a processor. I started calling sellers up, hey, would you be willing to rent the property to me for a few years, and then I'll close on, I'll take in their maintenance repairs. Well, they said, well, I need my money out of the home because I want to go buy my other home for whatever transfer. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did was I said, okay, I'm a loan officer. I'll go ahead and refinance your property at 80% loan to value, and then I'll make the payments. So, and then, oh, then by the way, your new home, I want to do that loan. Okay. And then I
Nice.
would put a tenant buyer into the property and they would put an option fee. They would put money down. So in one lead, I was making like $35,000 because I was doing the loan here,
Wow.
the refinance, the new loan, and then the tenant buyer. Um, and then I would put a tenant buyer in there and then I would cash flow roughly about $500 a month. So that's
So
how I started doing my creative real.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, no, no. Let's dive into that a little bit. So a little bit more with, and they can be pretend numbers, but maybe put some numbers to this. And I don't know if you want to use numbers from back then or today, but just so our listener might be able to understand, okay, you have property A and property B. And so you reach out to the owner of property A and you're trying to solve a problem. You're using your listening skills. It sounds like that you learned from Mary Brown, I think it was.
Yes.
and and so, but you're trying to solve a problem for the owner of property A. Put some numbers behind it with property A, property B, and then the tenant buyer. What does that all look like?
Sure. So at the time, I would refinance them at 80% loan to value.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I would do back then, the arms were very popular. And I'm
Mm,
surprised they're not popular in this market condition because of higher
mm-hmm.
rates, but the rates were roughly about where they're at now. They're about 7.5, but I
Mm-hmm.
would do a 5 2 or 5 1 or 5 2 arm. So the interest rates I'd get in about 5 1/4. So they'd be fixed for about 2 to 3 years. And after that, they would reset.
Mm-hmm.
So and then they would take a cash out. So I would only put $100 down because they're taking all this money. So in a sense, they're thinking I'm putting all this capital down, that type of thing, because they're getting the money to move. I'm solving their problem.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would so I don't know, they whatever they pull out. Let's say I pull out, I don't remember because it was so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we refinance for 150,000. They
Mm-hmm.
might have had a mortgage for 80,000. They take that
Mm-hmm.
difference and they would go ahead and use
Mm-hmm.
that money for the down payment for the next home because all they
Yep.
needed at that time was like about 5 or 10% down of
Gotcha.
the new home because they'll do a
Right, right.
conventional loan on that. And then I would make the payments on the existing home.
Okay.
And then
You're buying
what
that
I would do,
existing home subject to the mortgage, correct?
no,
No.
that one I wasn't buying. It's kind of, but I was doing a rent to own. I went
Oh
under the
yeah.
contract
Right, right.
with a lease agreement with the seller allowing me to sublet it.
Got it. Okay, understood. I gotcha.
Now, but back then I wasn't doing subject twos yet. I was doing a
Okay,
lease option.
got it.
Nowadays I would do a subject two
Yeah, yeah.
or an agreement for D. There's different
Yes.
strategies nowadays, but
Sure.
now definitely I would do that because I want the depreciation. Back then I didn't know about the whole depreciation thing as
Yeah,
much.
sure.
So that's kind of how I do. And then I would put a tenant buyer in there and I would cash flow a minimum of about $500 a month.
I
I
see.
did one. Yeah, let me give you a quick one. I did one in Orlando not too long ago, just before COVID. The seller was a realtor. She wanted $179,000 for this home,
Okay.
and um, I put $100 down. She wanted the market rent at the time there was 1,350 a month, 1,350. I negotiated down to $1,200
Okay.
because I said I'm taking care of the maintenance and repairs, and I only had to put 2 months down up front.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
But I only put $100 down to lock it up. And I said, when I take possession of the property, I'll give you a remaining balance of the 2,300.
Okay. And she agreed to
Yep.
that?
Yep. Perfectly fine.
Mhm.
And also she agreed to, as long as I make my payment on or before the due date,
Mhm.
$150 came off of the purchase price, as long as I made my monthly payment on time each
Nice.
month. So then, and she had somebody, I said, you know what? At least you know I'm going to take the property. So we'll close in roughly in about 45, 60 days. No rush. If you need 90 days, no problem. So then, so paying her $1,200 a month and
Mhm.
179,000. So then I went out and found my tenant buyer,
Mhm.
sold it to him, went under contract for 214,000,
Nice.
and his rent to me was 1,500. And
Nice.
he put first, last, security, and 3% down. So he put a little bit more than $11,000 down. So out of 11,000, I had to give her remaining balance of the 2,300.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that was a 30-month contract. And in the contract, the tenant buyer is supposed to notify me 90 days if he's going to buy that property.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't, these guys are good people, had no issues. Over 30 months, I reached out to him maybe twice because a hurricane came through. I want to make sure everything was good.
Yeah.
And good people. And then so we're coming to the end of the agreement, and he had 45 days left.
Mhm.
Technically, he breached the contract. He was supposed to notify me. He
Right,
never
right,
did.
right. Right.
I go, are you gonna purchase this property? He goes, oh yeah, I wanna. I'm like, all right, here, reach out to this loan officer, see what they could do. Now remember, I sold it to them for 214,000.
Right.
His appraisal came in
Mhm.
at 265,000. I could have been a jerk saying sorry, but I didn't want to
Right.
do it. These guys are
Right,
good
right.
people.
Sure.
So they got $50,000 of equity. The seller loved it.
Right.
And I end up, so $100, I end up making a little bit more than 50,000 when you add all the cash flow and everything up on a
That's
$100
amazing.
investment.
That's amazing. And the other thing I love about it is it really does sound like it was win-win-win, right? Everybody won uh,
Everybody won.
in that deal
Yep.
because we get a bad rap as real estate investors that we're just greedy jerks trying to rip people off, and it's like if you do things right and you treat people well, you're actually just solving people's problems and adding value, and everybody can win in a particular deal. So I love that. Um, all right. So and that has that kind of, you mentioned subject to and contract for deed or agreement for deed. So it sounds like you've added to your tool belt as far as
Yeah.
different things that different tools you can pull out depending on what the need is. Um, uh, what's really your focus these days? I mean, is that that example you just gave? Is that kind of what your focus is right now?
That's one of them. Well, I've been focusing on mobile home parks. I
Mm,
purchased 5 mobile home parks last year, one this year.
wow.
So I've been focusing not because the higher interest rates, affordability, I've been focusing on that.
Yeah.
But I still do residential. I have over 600 bird dogs that feed me deals.
That's
So like
that's amazing.
trashmen, yeah, trashmen, they work in neighborhoods, they know what homes are sitting empty, landscapers, snowplow removals, pool. Where I really get my home run deals are hospice nurses. So
Interesting.
yeah, so yeah,
How
so
does that work?
I just did one not too long ago. Um,
Okay.
I did one not too long ago. So there's two different ways. Like the trashman, those guys, they take it on Zillow, they text it to a phone number, then my VA will take it and run with it and chase it
Mm.
down. Those guys, because I'm not a licensed realtor,
Hmm.
I'm an investor, so I can pay a referral fee.
Mm. Hmm.
So those guys, I'll give like $500 on those. But the hospice nurses, I had one where the daughter called me up. Her parents are in their mid 80s and the father's in hospice.
Hmm.
And they're to a point now where at night, the mother, she's elderly, she can't help him to the restroom. So they had to
Hmm.
move in with the daughter, and the daughter lived over 3 hours away. And their parents have owned this home more than 30 years. So they called me up and it was just too much for them to get the house ready. I said, you know what? Just take what you want, whatever you don't want, leave behind. I mean, they left holiday decorations, um, everything you can think of,
Hmm.
tools, couches, dishes, everything was left behind, cable boxes, modems. So I gave a cash offer and a seller financing offer. They went with a seller financing offer at a 4% interest rate. My payment to them is $991 a month. And I got zero down with 2 months with no mortgage payments because I had to get the property ready and cleaned up. So then I brought a auction company in. We auctioned all the things off in the property, use that money for some light cosmetics. I added $79,000 to the purchase price. I wrapped it to my end buyer. His rate is 7.75. He's paying me close to $2,200 a month. Out of the $2,200 a month, I give the seller $991 a month, and he put $30,000 down.
Oh my gosh.
So
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
that's amazing. You've given some really good details on several case studies already. So, I mean, okay, zoom out a little bit. How have you done? This is where you can share as much as you want, obviously, but did you make back the 90% that you'd lost before, or how have you done
yeah,
financially in the
way
last?
yeah, yeah, way past the 90%. I mean, you're talking. I lost that. I was in my early 30s, and
Hmm.
now I'm in my 50s. So yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, definitely moved on from
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
past. You
Right.
know.
Right. Well, I mean, that's fantastic. What would you say, led to the kind of from that low point of losing most of the money you had made? I mean, mindset wise, or just I guess your mental approach. What was it that really led to your success?
Mindset is one of them, and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals to learn from and lift from. Because even at DM, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know quite a bit, but
Yeah.
even at DMV, I go out there and start
Yeah.
talking to other people, and I learn
Right.
from other people.
For
And you're
sure.
always networking and like doing business together. Like, I was on a podcast, and somebody said to me, like, what is the one thing that's different in our industry versus other industries?
Mm-hmm.
Or what was the biggest thing that was the aha moment in our industry?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, where in our industry, your competitor can be your business partner.
Mm, I love that.
That's probably the, you know.
Yeah. Um, so before I do have some rapid fire questions, but a couple things. Um, First off, I know there's you spoke earlier about it may have been on your show, may have been on mine. I honestly can't remember at this point, but about policing our own and just kind of really being there to kind of in a sense self-regulate from an industry standpoint. Um, what would you say are some controversial or maybe controversial strategies or tactics that maybe some gurus are teaching or people are learning that you think are problematic? You don't have to call anybody out or anything, but what's a controversial approach to the creative finance space that you're seeing these days?
Biggest one is subject to assignments, or the
Okay.
wholesaling and a subject to deal. That is and it's only come on in the last couple of years. I've been in this business a long time, and subject twos, just so people are aware what a subject to is you're buying the property, keeping the existing mortgage in the seller's name, and they're transferring the deed over to you, and you take
Hmm.
ownership.
Hmm.
So, and it's been around for investors, and it's an advanced strategy, and it took me a while to learn the strategy.
Yeah.
So it's designed for us investors to come in, buy a property, and you stay in the middle. Typically, you buy it, you hold it, you rent it, one of those type of things.
Yeah.
But if you sell it to an end buyer, you have to qualify them because there's consumer protection regulations to make sure that they can afford the property.
Hmm.
Well, what's happening is what's called an assignment, where they lock up the deal and they sell off the deal to somebody else, and they think they're out of it and they walk away. They think that now. But what they're doing is they're not qualifying. They're just looking, oh my God, I'm going to get $30,000 to sign this contract. Oh,
Hmm.
wow, I'm going to make
Hmm.
money. And
Right.
they're not qualifying the end buyer correctly to make sure they can afford that property. And if they put that end buyer into that property, and
Hmm.
then that end buyer defaults, now the seller's mortgage is in
Hmm.
jeopardy. So you're
Yeah.
destroying the seller's mortgage. Now
Right.
they say, oh, they're going to be foreclosed on in the first place. Well, it's not the case. They may not have been foreclosed on. You don't know. They could have sold that property. And a lot of
Yeah.
times, some of these people might not even been in a financial situation. That's
Right.
why, for me, if they're not financial distress, I won't even pitch a subject to. I'll pitch a different strategy, like an agreement free, because you can still do these creative seller financing strategies of
Right.
protecting the seller at the same time.
Right.
But that
Right.
is probably the one biggest one, and I think it's probably going to become regulated because they're destroying the industry right now.
Hmm.
Because you should not be doing assignments on a subject to. You should or have an experienced investor that you're working with, that they buy it. So if something happens, they
Yeah.
make it. It's happened to me. I've had buyers or tenants in my properties that stopped making payments, and I had to keep making payments because that's what we agreed to. We agreed to that we're going to make those payments on that. And then
Mm.
the other thing, what they're doing is they're doing what's called a performance deed or deed in lieu. Like
Hmm.
I had somebody that
Yeah.
reached out to me, and it's like, oh, after 30 days, if I don't make the payment, you get the property back after 30 days.
Right. So
You know,
they're getting the deed in lieu signed at closing, right? Like at
correct.
the transfer of the property. I've done deeds in lieu when I'm in the process of foreclosing and I'm saying, hey, as the lender in this case, hey, I don't actually want to foreclose. Would you like to provide the property to me and we can forget this whole foreclosure thing? But I'm not getting a deed in lieu signed at the closing of
And they're saying after 30 days delinquent, you get that property back to the seller. That's how they're selling this.
wow.
And then they're selling it. But hear me out for this one.
Yeah.
So I had a phone call that the investor purchased a subject to from a wholesaler that was in assignment, and they used a transactional coordinator, and they wrapped it, put an end buyer, and the end buyer put $50,000 down. Well, first of all, you always want to have escrow money, so if something happens, you can
Sure.
make that payment.
Right.
Well, what they did is they use a loan servicing company like Madison.
Yeah.
So when the buyer sends a check in, they didn't know this, that the servicing company holds that check for how long? 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So they held that check for 2 weeks. Well, the buyer, the first payment was on the 5th. The second payment was on the 9th. The third payment was on the 18th. So when Madison receives that, the loan servicer receives that payment and they
Sure.
disperse the funds,
Right.
you're 2 weeks later, you're a month behind.
Right. Right. Right.
The lady called up. She goes, I want my property back.
Wow.
Yep.
So would you
Lot,
say,
lot.
I mean, and I know there are a lot of people teaching these strategies um, what would you say, what's the advice for the person, the newbie investor who's getting taught these strategies to do like an assignment of a subject to, what should they do instead?
It's crazy why you do an assignment because you can stay in the deal and make so much more money.
Mm.
That's what blows me away. All right, I'm going to make $10,000, $15,000. I had somebody in my program. She had a deal that came in. She's done wholesaling for 5 years,
Hmm.
and this property needed about $35,000 worth of work,
Okay.
and she didn't have the capital because she had it in a fix and flip. And so I'm like, okay, how much money are you gonna make? I'm gonna ask for 15,000. When it's all said and done, what do you think she's gonna? She said she'll walk away. I'll walk away with eight to $12,000, somewhere in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we went through the whole analyzing the deal.
Yeah.
She was making $171,000 over 5 years instead,
Doing it your way. Wow.
and using your buyer's down payment.
Right.
You
Right.
you use your buyer's down payment to get in a deal, and then you use that money in reserve so if something
Right.
happens.
Right. I gotcha. You don't just make a transaction fee. You're staying in the deal. Got it.
Correct. And
Um,
she's cash flowing 750 a month on that deal.
that's amazing. Before we get to some rapid fire questions and a little bit more about your business today, I know you recently went through a health scare. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Sure. About a year ago, my hair just started coming back. I had stage 3. So, and yeah, it kicked. It felt like I felt that I went through COVID twice in life because I couldn't be around people.
Mm,
Because my
wow.
immune system was wiped. I had testicular stage 3, spread my
Mm,
abdomen, my shoulder, my neck.
wow.
I don't want to get into
Yeah.
I went through the University of Miami, and
Hmm.
I had to bring my vaccine in, and I became a lab rat, and they think
Mm,
it might have been from the vaccine, believe it or
mm,
not.
wow.
It's kind of crazy. Because I didn't want to get vaccinated, but we had to go to Italy, and we spent a month and a half in Italy, and I had to get vaccinated. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I was lost 30 pounds, lost my hair. So,
Wow.
I'm at peace. I'm
Mm,
really at peace. I was healthy before,
yeah.
and I bounced back really quick. And I really think a lot of it had to do with my mindset. I went
Mm,
into it. I was strong.
hmm.
I'm kicking this butt, and I did a lot of meditation. Dr. Joe
Yeah.
Dispenza. I don't know if you know Joe Dispenza
Yeah.
stuff
Hmm.
with meditation. Great
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff, and just did a lot of that and healthy, and really focus my mind. And with his stuff, it's about controlling your mind, and he believes that your mind can heal your body,
Hmm.
that type
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
yeah, I feel good.
yeah, then no, it's fantastic that you're at peace and you feel good. I'm so thankful you pulled through and everything. That's got to be incredibly scary. I mean, there's the one quote about a healthy man has 1,000 wishes or something like that, and a sick man has only one, something like that. I know I butchered it, but you know, what was going through your mind when at the kind of at the low point, if you don't mind?
Yeah, my low point was really like I was sick. My low point, like for around Christmas time, like it was right around like Thanksgiving through Christmas for about 45 days. I was
Mhm.
just, I just to walk from here to like your door behind you.
Yeah.
If I felt like I ran 3 miles. I was so out of breath. I had no
Wow.
cells, no cells to carry the oxygen through my body. That was just like, because that's what they do. They just kill everything in your body type of thing
Yeah.
for people.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
but
Hmm.
I just wanted to try to like take something, just sleep and try to get through it, like that
Hmm.
type of thing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
But yeah, I just kept fighting and just I couldn't move around. God bless my other half; she's there helping me, taking care of me.
Hmm.
But I still my mindset that last week because it was the treatments were brutal. It was Monday
Hmm.
through Friday,
Hmm.
for each day of the week, Monday through Friday, for 6 to 8 hours a day. I sat there. So it was 1 week on, 2 weeks off, 1 week on, total 4 weeks. So the
Wow.
first 2 weeks I was okay. I kind of fought through it. Sure, I was sick, that
Hmm.
type of thing.
Right.
Third week, the third cycle, I was like, all right. And then the last one was just, you're done.
Wow.
Couldn't eat anything.
Yeah. Um, that's I just that's wild. But you really think that your mindset really helped, and then the
Yeah,
meditation really helped you?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
that's amazing. So, I imagine your business took a little bit of a hit during that time. How has it rebounded since then?
That's the good thing. That's why we like notes, that passive income.
That's right.
I literally, that's what
Yeah.
I use, my passive income, my notes, my rentals.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing any real estate deals. I
Mhm.
did have some of my members, and I'd jump on once a week, and a lot of them, a couple of them knew something was off because I was wearing a hat at that point, but I didn't
Mhm.
tell people that I was sick during that time period. But I
Mhm.
remember sitting here where I'm at now, and I usually teach for about an hour and a half, and an hour into it, I'm like, I gotta go, guys.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
it, yeah, I mean, thank God I had the passive income coming in.
Yeah. For sure. I mean,
It really helped.
if you were tied to a W-2, I mean, that with not much savings, that wouldn't have been good, right?
No,
Um,
no.
um, Awesome. Well, before I get to my rapid fire questions, talk to the listener about how you do mentorship and what else you have going on with your business.
Sure. Um, just Google me, Mark Monroe. That's Mark Monroe, Monroe, real estate, or Mark minus sign Monroe.com. Just follow me. I have a pretty large Facebook group, about 166,000 members over there in seller financing homes. So we're always educating, and on Monday nights I do free Zooms for people that want to learn seller financing strategies. So we do free Zooms, and then I do have a mentorship program, but I only bring 3 to 5 people on at a time. I don't bring a lot of people on because I'm still actively investing. I'm doing it.
Hmm.
I don't want to make it a full-time thing. I'm here to
Hmm.
help people because that's how I learn.
Yeah.
And I came from nothing and I had no money. So I was that bird dog, if you will, for other investors, how I started
Hmm.
out back in the day. So I kind of just like to pay it forward. And I really like people um, that don't think they can do it. Those are the ones that I really want to help. And
Hmm.
it's the two things I really, out of everything that I enjoy in real estate, it's not about the money. Money's nice, but
Hmm.
the two things that I really enjoy is when I'm putting a tenant buyer into one of my properties
Hmm.
and they didn't think they could become homeowners. They have good income, but the credit or whatever,
Hmm. Yeah.
that when they become homeowners and they refinance or put that property into their name,
Yeah.
that's one of the most things I
Satis.
love helping. I
Yeah.
like finding families with small children that really that. And then
Yeah.
I like helping investors, people that don't think they can um make it in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to say,
Hmm.
when you're investing in real estate, no matter if you're doing notes, you're doing whatever, you can't quit. When you fail, don't look at it as quitting. You just learn from it and move on.
Mm.
That's probably one of the biggest things where I see people come in. Oh, I failed at this. I'm going to quit. You just look at it as learning, pick up
Right.
and move on because we all fail. If you're not failing, you're not learning. So keep that in mind. That's one of the
Right. Right.
biggest things.
So it doesn't mean you should quit real estate investing if you have if a deal goes wrong, right? You should
Correct.
maybe adjust what you're doing a little bit, but doesn't mean you just quit entirely. I love that. Um, awesome. We've got a few minutes here for some rapid fire questions. You ready, Mark?
I am.
All right. What's one thing that people misunderstand about you?
Good question. Misunderstand. Maybe they don't think I'm approachable,
Mm,
and you definitely am very approachable. Just come
yeah,
up, talk to me. You know,
for sure. I can say that you are. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
who was that? Probably the guy that ran GE back in the day. Jack. What was his
Well,
name?
Welch, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be a good one. I don't think we've had that answer on the show.
Jack
Um,
Welch. Yeah, he was the master.
yeah, if you were
Yeah,
given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
invest it. Real estate notes.
Yeah, love
Probably
it.
notes. You know,
What is a challenge that you're facing in your business right now?
good people. But
Mm,
I adjusted my business so I don't need good people.
mm,
Um, I would say, yeah, I would say good people,
hmm
just people that
yeah,
don't follow through what they say.
hmm Sure. What's one occupation that that you've never done that you would love to try?
Pilot.
Pilot. I like that. Um, what would you say? How about a book or two that you could recommend for our listener?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We
Sure.
all love that one.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a classic. That's why everybody gets into it.
Yep.
It's true story. And then Never Split the Difference.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Chris Voss about
Yes.
negotiation. Um, you asked me this question on your show, but what is one question that you wish I had asked, but I haven't asked?
What's one question that you have not asked? Wow. I think you covered the same thing. I said you stumped me and I stumped you. We stumped each
Right.
other,
You
huh?
did. You did. Yeah. Um,
How about a hobbies? My hobbies.
yeah.
I love traveling. That's my
Yeah.
hobbies. Traveling and good food. I like traveling to places where I never been and trying their cuisine, the food that, like, for example, I was in Tokyo and I'll try anything.
hmm
And I had raw horse tongue, believe it or not. It was
Really?
delicious. It was so good, sliced really thin.
Wow.
I love cooked scallops, but I hated the raw scallops. They're
Oh,
chewy and
okay. I
grizzly.
love cooked scallops too. Yeah.
So that's one
Yeah.
of the things. I guess that's a good
Okay.
question.
Yeah. And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but your financial abundance that you've experienced allows you to do all that travel, right?
One, yeah, 100%. It's just, and then also I live way below my means,
Mm,
way below my means. So I don't need those, I just enjoy life. That's kind of what it's about right now. It's
hmm
just enjoy life, travel, be around good friends, family, and just, especially after my health scare, life
Yeah.
is short. You
Sure.
gotta enjoy every moment of it.
Love that. That's really good. Well, Mark Monroe, where you already mentioned, but say it one more time. Where can our listeners find you?
Just Google Mark Monroe, real estate investor. You just Google it. I'll come up that way. And or Mark the minus sign Monroe, MONROE.com. So thanks so much for having me on. I
Yeah,
really
this has been
appreciate it,
great.
Gene.
Yep.
All right,
And
Jamie.
to the listener out there, we thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on From Adversity to Abundance. We hope today's episode has equipped you with valuable insights and practical advice to elevate your real estate journey. For more inspiring stories and resources, visit us at www.adversitytoabundance.com. If this episode has inspired you, please share it with a friend who could also benefit from our conversation. Together, let's turn adversity into abundance. Until next time, keep building your mental fitness and your real estate empire.